Mark Lawson checked his phone for the fourth time in 2 minutes. 7:12 p.m. The school auditorium doors were already closing. Inside, parents filled the seats, their voices blending into excited chatter. Programs rustled. Cameras flashed. Somewhere behind those doors, the stage lights were warming up. And Mark was late. Again. He tightened his grip on the steering wheel, the engine still running, his chest heavy with guilt. 12-hour shift. Emergency call. No choice. That's what he told himself every time. But excuses didn't make empty seats disappear. His daughter Lily had been counting down to this night for weeks. "Promise you'll be there, Dad," she'd said, eyes bright, costume already hanging in her closet. "I promise," he'd replied. Now the promise felt like glass in his throat. Mark finally stepped inside the auditorium, just as the music began. He scanned the rows instinctively, heart sinking when he saw the small gap in the front row, one empty chair beside Lily's teacher. Lily stood on stage, scanning the crowd nervously. For a moment, her eyes landed on the empty seat. Her smile faded, just slightly. Mark froze in the aisle. He didn't sit. He couldn't. A lump formed in his chest as applause erupted for the first performance. He slipped back out into the hallway, leaning against the wall, staring at the floor like a man who had failed the one job that mattered most. "Hey," a soft voice said. Mark looked up. A woman stood a few feet away, holding a folded program. Professional, calm, kind eyes. "They're amazing up there," she said gently. "Your daughter included." Mark swallowed hard. "You saw her?" She smiled. "Front row. She's very brave." For the first time that night, Mark breathed. He had no idea that the woman comforting him in a quiet school hallway was about to change his life completely. Mark stayed where he was, leaning against the wall as if it were the only thing holding him upright. The applause from inside the auditorium washed over them, loud and distant at the same time. "I'm Mark," he said finally, his voice low. "Lily's dad." "I'm Claire," the woman replied. She shifted the program in her hands, but didn't look away from him. "I work with the district. I help coordinate events like this." Mark nodded, embarrassed. "Then you probably see this a lot. Parents who don't make it." Claire shook her head gently. "I see parents who are trying. That's different." Her words landed deeper than she probably realized. Mark exhaled, shoulders dropping. "I just wanted her to look out there and know I was watching." "She did," Claire said softly. "Even if she didn't see you, she felt you. Kids always do." Another round of applause thundered through the walls. Claire glanced toward the doors. "You can still catch the next performance. You'll want to be inside for that." Mark hesitated. "What if she already thinks I didn't come?" "Then you prove her wrong," Claire said, a small smile forming. "I'll walk you in." They entered together, slipping into the back row just as Lily's group took the stage again. Mark leaned forward, eyes locked on his daughter. When Lily spotted him, her face lit up, full, bright, unmistakable. Mark felt his chest tighten. Beside him, Claire watched quietly, a thoughtful expression crossing her face. Neither of them knew it yet, but this was more than a chance meeting. It was the beginning of something neither had planned, and both would soon need. The final note rang out, and the auditorium erupted in applause. Mark stood before he even realized it, clapping harder than anyone around him. On stage, Lily spotted him again and waved, her whole face glowing with relief and pride. Mark pressed his hand to his chest, blinking fast. When the lights came up and parents began filing toward the exits, Claire stood as well. "You should go meet her," she said. "She'll be looking for you." "I will," Mark replied. "Thank you for all of this." Claire smiled, softer now. "You're welcome, Mark." Backstage was a whirlwind of costumes, flowers, and excited voices. Lily launched herself into Mark's arms the moment she saw him. "You came," she said, squeezing him tight. "I wouldn't miss it for the world," he said, meaning it with everything he had. As they walked toward the parking lot later, Lily skipping ahead, Mark noticed Claire, standing near the entrance, speaking quietly with one of the teachers. She glanced up and caught his eye. Mark hesitated, then walked over. "Listen," he said, lowering his voice. "I know this might sound strange, but would you like to get coffee sometime?" Claire looked surprised, then thoughtful. For a brief second, Mark worried he'd misread everything. "I'd like that," she said. "I really would." They exchanged numbers. Nothing dramatic, just a quiet agreement. As Mark walked away, Lily tugged his hand. "Who was that lady, Dad?" Mark smiled to himself. "Someone kind." Claire watched them go, her expression unreadable. She didn't tell him that night who she really was, or that, starting Monday morning, she'd be his new boss. And when that truth came out, everything would change. Monday arrived faster than Mark expected. He dropped Lily off at school, kissed her forehead, and promised, again, that he'd be on time for pickup. Then he drove to work, mentally bracing himself for another long day of maintenance requests, broken fixtures, and quiet, thankless tasks. The lobby buzzed with unusual energy when he walked in. People moved quickly, straightening their posture, whispering as they passed. "Big meeting," someone muttered. Mark frowned. He clocked in and headed toward the conference room, toolbox still in hand, planning to sit in the back like always. The room fell silent. A woman stood at the front, reviewing notes on a tablet. Calm, confident, professional. "Claire." Mark stopped short, his stomach dropping. She looked up, and for the briefest second, her composure cracked. Just a flicker. Recognition. Surprise. "Good morning," she said smoothly, turning to the room. "I'm Claire Reynolds. As of today, I'll be overseeing operations for this division." Operations. Overseeing him. Mark's mind raced. New boss. The woman from the hallway. The one who had seen him at his most vulnerable. After the meeting, Mark tried to slip out quietly, but her voice stopped him. "Mark, could you stay a moment?" The room emptied. Silence stretched between them. "I didn't know," he said first. "I didn't tell you," she replied. "I wanted to keep that night honest." He nodded slowly. "So did I." They stood there, both aware that something fragile and complicated had begun, and now it lived in the space between professional boundaries and growing feelings neither could ignore. The silence between them felt heavier than any conversation. Claire cleared her throat first. "I want to be clear," she said, professional tone settling back into place. "What happened Friday night doesn't change how I do my job." Mark nodded quickly. "Of course. I don't expect any special treatment." "I wouldn't offer it," she said gently, but her eyes softened. "Still, I need to know if this will be uncomfortable for you." Mark considered the question honestly. "I won't lie. It surprised me. But I'm here to work. Lily depends on that." The mention of his daughter shifted something in Claire's expression. Respect, maybe, or understanding. "Then we're on the same page," she said. "Thank you for staying." Mark left the conference room with his head spinning. The woman who had comforted him, laughed with him, agreed to coffee, was now the one approving his schedules and signing his evaluations. Over the next few days, they kept their distance. Conversations were brief, polite, professional, but every glance carried memory. Every shared space felt charged with words left unsaid. On Wednesday afternoon, Mark fixed a broken light outside Claire's office. As he worked, he heard her voice on the phone, firm, controlled, commanding. When she hung up, she noticed him. "Mark," she said, hesitating. "About that coffee." He straightened slowly. "Yeah." She smiled just slightly. "Maybe we should talk. Not as boss and employee. Just honestly." Mark met her gaze, heart pounding. "I'd like that." Neither of them realized it yet, but the lines they were trying so hard to protect were already beginning to blur. They met at a small cafe 2 blocks from the office, the kind of place where no one asked questions and everyone minded their own business. Mark arrived early, sitting by the window, hands wrapped around a mug he hadn't touched. When Claire walked in, she looked different. No blazer, no clipboard, no authority hanging around her shoulders. Just a woman in a soft sweater, hair loosely tied back, eyes scanning the room until they found him. "Hi," she said quietly. "Hi," Mark replied. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The air between them carried everything they hadn't said all week. "I shouldn't have asked you here," Claire admitted first. "Not because I don't want to be here, but because I know how complicated this is." Mark nodded. "I've been thinking the same thing. I can't afford to lose my job. Lily needs stability." "I know," she said, her voice softer. "And I won't ever put you in a position where you feel pressured or unsafe. If this is a bad idea, say the word. I'll respect it." Mark studied her face, searching for anything that felt false. He didn't find it. "I don't feel pressured," he said slowly. "I feel seen. And that doesn't happen often." Claire swallowed. "It doesn't for me either." They didn't hold hands. They didn't make promises. They just talked about Lily, about long days, about loneliness that didn't care how successful or responsible you were. When they stood to leave, nothing had changed on the surface. But inside, both of them knew they'd crossed into something real. After that night, things didn't suddenly become easier. If anything, they became more careful. At work, Claire was exactly what everyone expected: focused, fair, distant when she needed to be. Mark noticed how deliberately she treated him the same as everyone else. No favors, no shortcuts. Sometimes, that restraint felt heavier than distance. Outside of work, though, something gentle began to grow. They met occasionally, never rushed, never hidden, always intentional. A quiet walk after Lily fell asleep. Coffee before sunrise. Conversations that didn't need to be dramatic to be meaningful. One evening, Mark invited Claire over for dinner. Nothing fancy. Pasta, store-bought bread, Lily's favorite juice on the table. Lily watched Claire carefully at first, curious but cautious. Mark noticed the way Claire lowered herself to Lily's level, how she listened more than she spoke. "Dad says you helped him when he was sad," Lily said suddenly. Mark's heart stopped. Claire smiled softly. "I think your dad helped me too." That night, after Lily went to bed, Mark and Claire sat in the quiet kitchen. No music, no phones. "I'm scared," Mark admitted. "Not of you. Of wanting something that could hurt my daughter if it falls apart." Claire nodded. "I'm scared too. Of failing at the one thing that actually matters." She reached across the table, stopping just short of his hand. "I don't want to rush," she said, "but I don't want to walk away either." Mark met her eyes and understood. Sometimes, staying wasn't about certainty. It was about choosing not to leave. It was impossible to keep something real completely hidden. Whispers started first, quiet glances in the hallway, pauses in conversation when Mark entered a room. Someone noticed that Claire asked about his workload more carefully than others. Someone else noticed Mark leaving the building a little later on the same evening she did. Neither of them crossed a line, but perception didn't care about facts. One afternoon, Mark was called into HR. The conversation was polite, neutral, but clear. "We just want to be sure there are no conflicts of interest," the representative said, folding her hands neatly on the desk. Mark nodded, jaw tight. "There aren't." Across the building, Claire was having a similar conversation with the board. "You've worked hard for this role," one of them said. "We don't want distractions." Claire held their gaze steadily. "Then judge me by my work, not by rumors." That night, Mark and Claire met at the park near Lily's school. The air was cool, the playground empty. "This could cost you everything," Mark said quietly. "Your career, your reputation." Claire shook her head. "What would it cost me if I walked away?" He didn't answer. He didn't need to. "I won't let this hurt you or Lily," she continued. "If it ever does, I'll step back." Mark felt the weight of her words. He had spent years choosing safety over happiness. Tonight, standing under flickering streetlights, he realized something had shifted. "I don't need perfection," he said. "I just need honesty." Claire smiled, eyes shining. Then we're still standing. And for the first time, neither of them felt like they were standing alone. Life didn't slow down to make space for their feelings. If anything, it moved faster. Mark's days were still long, filled with early mornings and late pickups. Claire's schedule grew heavier, meetings stacking on meetings, pressure coming from every direction. But somewhere between responsibility and exhaustion, they learned how to show up for each other in small, meaningful ways. Claire started coming to Lily's soccer games, not standing out, not drawing attention, just sitting on the bench with the other parents. Lily noticed first. "She always cheers for me," Lily whispered to Mark one afternoon. "Even when I mess up." Mark smiled. "That means she cares." One evening, Lily caught a fever. Mark called Claire without thinking, voice tight with worry. Claire left a meeting early and showed up at the apartment with soup, medicine, and calm reassurance. She didn't take over. She stood beside him. Later that night, after Lily fell asleep, Mark sat on the couch, exhaustion finally settling in. "You don't have to do this," he said quietly. "You didn't sign up for sick nights and missed sleep." Claire sat next to him, close but not pressing. "I know. I choose it." That word, choose, hit him harder than any promise ever had. In a world that often rewarded ambition over presence, Claire was choosing the harder thing. And Mark realized he was doing the same, not because it was safe, but because it was real. Sometimes love wasn't about grand declarations. Sometimes it was about showing up again and again when it mattered most. The next school play came quietly. No flyers on the fridge. No countdown. Just a simple note in Lily's backpack reminding parents of the performance. Mark read it twice, then once more, just to be sure. This time, he arrived early. He sat in the front row, hands folded, heart steady. When Claire arrived, she didn't stand in the aisle or hover at the back. She slid into the seat beside him, warm and familiar. "You're early," she whispered. "So are you," he replied, smiling. When Lily stepped onto the stage and scanned the crowd, she found them immediately. Her smile didn't flicker. It stayed, bright, confident, certain. After the show, Lily ran to them, wrapping her arms around both at once. "You both came," she said, like it was the most natural thing in the world. Mark felt something settle inside his chest, something he carried for years, finally easing. Later that night, as they walked home under soft streetlights, Claire spoke quietly. "I don't know what the future looks like." Mark nodded. "Neither do I." She took his hand. "But I know I want to be part of it." He squeezed her fingers. "So do I." Some stories begin with promises. Theirs began with showing up. And this time, no seat was ever empty again. Like, subscribe, and comment if you believe showing up matters more than perfection.